Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Evan Grant and Joe Hoyt. Joe is at the Super Bowl. He will be there for a while, and he's been doing a lot of talking this week. So here's the burning topic, of course, that everybody wants to know about is that what are you going to eat during the Super Bowl?
That's a great question. I'll be honest with you. I've been just on such a pimento cheese and like cracker hype recently that like we get other snacks on things like we have game nights and stuff, and then we'll get pimento cheese and I'll be like, okay, I'll have a little bit of that. And next thing you know, I realize I've eaten a pound of pimento cheese and like 47 crackers, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm not hungry for anything else. So I kind of have a sneaky feeling that that's how my Super Bowl experience is going to go.
All right, now listen,
On
I'm
the
a big
burger
pimento
beat
cheese aficionado. So what they're like, I love Central Market, I don't like their pimento cheese. It's too
Yeah.
dry. I like my pimento cheese to be a little creamy. And if it's got a little jalapeno in it, so much the better. So Evan, what
Yeah.
about you? What's your thought on pimento
Well,
cheese?
wait a minute. On the burger beat this week, I had a pimento cheeseburger that was outstanding.
Where was that,
Um,
Evan?
Mayor's Garden, their Mayor's Burger is got pimento cheese, bacon jam, arugula. It's really good. It might be my favorite because we're gonna do sports bars, and it might be my favorite sports bar burger that I've had.
Wow. Okay. Well,
Although
our
it
big
is
thing
hard
to
to beat,
have.
it's hard to beat the Katy Trail Ice House. It really is. But I am gonna eat during the Super Bowl, Kevin. I'll be making my world famous buffalo chicken dip.
Oh, that's
Ooh.
good. Buffalo chicken dip is very good. I
What
love
makes it
that.
world
A big.
famous? What makes it world famous? What do you do
Because
with it?
Well,
Evan
it's
says
mine.
so.
It's
Yeah.
mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So that's what
Um.
Evan thinks anyway. You,
Actually, it's my buffalo chicken dip, but the recipe is world famous because it's the one that everybody follows. It's basically 2 cans of chicken, some buffalo sauce, and some cream cheese.
we will have lots of stuff like that, but the headliner in ours will be Debbie makes great chicken wings. She bakes them and they are really good. So that's the headliner for our
Ooh, I
meal.
may swing by there and steal a few.
Come on. Come on over. Joe, you come too. Bring
I'm
the
down.
wife. It'll be a party.
Let's do
Be
it.
great. All right. So speaking of parties, so the Cowboys are no party. Let's say that. And
A master of the segue, Kevin
yeah, yeah.
Sherrington. The
The
Cowboys
Cowboys
are
are
no
no
party.
party. So Joe, you were out there and you had a little conversation with George Pickens, who of course is a central figure in the Cowboys' plans in this offseason. You know, they want to re-sign him, and I'm sure he would like to come back. He seemed to enjoy it. He had his best season so far. As I've said several times, I think he's the most talented wide receiver probably the Cowboys have ever had, just from sheer size, speed, route running, and hands. I don't believe I've ever seen a package quite like George Pickens. Of course, that's not the issue. The issue is what's in his head. So the Cowboys seem like they want to resign him, but they probably want to franchise tagging, which means we're putting right at $28 million. And of course, it'd be for 1 year. Most people don't like to get the franchise tag. I'm just going to say, I'm figuring that George Pickens is like most people, right, Joe?
That's kind of the assumption there, and it's one of the reasons why I want to talk to him yesterday. And I kind of set up the question that way a little bit, and I said, "Hey, George, everything was great this year for, for your experience with the Cowboys, above and beyond from their perspective, above and beyond from your perspective. What happens if the franchise tag, which has been historically a frustrating thing for players, is presented your way?" And he said, "Hey, I can't control the uncontrollables, and I've never been franchise tagged. I've never been a free agent, so I genuinely don't know how I'll feel when it happens." And I think kind of the prevailing thought, the inkling that's been around the NFL circles and Cowboy circles, or at least the question, is that whether or not it will frustrate him. And a lot of people think that there could be a chance, especially considering who his representation is with athletes first, who have shown a willingness to play hardball, as we saw last year with Micah Parsons. I think it's a huge question, and I think it's something worth following. As you pointed out, 28 million would be the franchise tag. But this is a guy who wants to get paid, I think, in excess of $30 million a year. For comparison's sake, CeeDee Lamb is getting paid an average of $34 million a year. And as you laid out, Kevin, this guy is the talent is up there too. Not the consistency of CeeDee Lamb, obviously, but the talent. So I think whether or not they franchise tag George Pickens, I think that's inevitable. Frankly, if they can't come to an agreement based on what I've heard, publicly and behind the scenes about their admiration for George Pickens and what he did from this offense. And I think I'll give you a little perspective. I started to ask Cavante Turpin yesterday about this. Like, hey, has your mind even gone to the place of George Pickens potentially in free agency? And right when I said free agency, he cut me off. And he's like, no, 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 no. I'm not going there. I'm not thinking about it. He's staying here whether he likes it or not. And he was kind of joking. But I do think that that's kind of the reality of the situation is the Cowboys are going to want to make sure that he does stay around. If they don't come to a deal, though, by July 15th on a long-term extension, if he's franchise tagged, then they can't negotiate long term for the rest of the season. And part of me wonders, though, if he holds out, just like CeeDee Lamb did a couple years ago. We saw a slow start to CeeDee Lamb's season and it ended up being okay. But I wonder how much that would affect George Pickens's impact on this offense and his connection with Dak Prescott if he were to miss training camp and also come in on a 1-year deal after being franchise tagged.
I got a question, Joe. You had this talk with you tried to talk to Pickens and you tried to talk to Turpin. I believe you said in the pre-show meeting that you did this at Pro Bowl practice.
I did, yes.
What exactly constitutes Pro Bowl practice?
Yeah, just think, Evan, paint yourself a picture of, Odessa, Texas in the summer and, just grinding in 2-a-days and it's just hot and no, it's not that. It was the most lackadaisical exhibition of athletic achievement I think I've seen. It was more, fun and kumbaya. I'll give you an example. I saw Dak Prescott line up against former Cowboys corner Nishan Wright yesterday in press coverage that Dak Prescott caught a slant for a touchdown. And let's just say if this was a podcast, that speed would be about 0.5 in terms of how they were going.
Speaking of Sean Wright, so the Cowboys give up on him, send him what was it, Minnesota? Is that where they sent him? I can't remember.
Yeah.
And he ends up with 4 interceptions this year, Joe. I mean, now he's a free agent, right? Would the Cowboys want him back?
I don't envision that. No. I do. I think I think his success, while definitely earning, he's always had talent. I mean, obviously you go back to his days, at Laney College and, doing the Bay Area and Oregon State. And that's a guy that, in terms of the frame, the model, like that's a guy that has always had a lot of talent. I think the fact that Al Harris believed in him and then opportunity kind of came his way. I think it was kind of a perfect storm for Nishan Wright this year, and good for him. I mean, he played outstanding this year. He forced multiple fumbles too. He was a turnover machine, which kind of seems to follow Al Harris players, and it's something that the Cowboys have lacked since Al Harris has left.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let me have you explain this to me now. So we're talking about the contract situation. We know that the Cowboys are over the cap as it stands right now, but this is the thing that always bugs me about the cap. It's like, but nobody cares because, as I understand it, Joe, they could clear up to $100 million in cap space if they reworked everybody's contracts. Now they're not going to do that because that pushes everybody's contracts into the next century. So, give me an idea. What do you feel like is a reasonable number that they might redo to get cap space? Does $50 million sound reasonable?
Yeah, for sure. I think more than that, to be honest. You talk about, hey, they won't do 100 million because they don't want to push everything, and I do think that that's a legitimate idea. I do think, and it's something worth watching. And maybe I'm just caught in the heat of the moment, and I do think that there is an urgency, though, to try and capitalize on Dak Prescott's window and his prime and what they have. And I think that I talked to you in the pre-show meeting about this. I think that Brian Schottenheimer has kind of bent the ear a little bit of Jerry Jones and made Jerry Jones a believer in what Brian Schottenheimer does. And I do think that there's kind of an impetus to make something happen this offseason. And again, I'll caveat that by saying that I think that feeling has been around before, and then they've gone out and the biggest signing they've had was biggest acquisition was Kenneth Murray, right? Like I think that that's something that's worth watching and something that's certainly a possibility. Jerry said he wants to bust the budget this year, and I don't know if he'll bust the budget, but I do think that they're going to create a good amount of cap space that gives them flexibility to do some things that I think can kind of push a little bit, not maybe not all the chips in, but can push a decent amount of the chips in to try and capitalize on Dak Prescott in this offense.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me, and it certainly seems that way from Jerry's standpoint. Because all the weird stuff he was saying about after the season was over is that you guys are getting on me and I deserve it, and I'm changing the way I do things, and he did change the way, right? He goes out and hires a defensive coordinator who'd never been one before, much less a head coach. So it feels like this is one of those times where Jerry has gotten the message from the media and fans that this isn't good, this is bad, and they're getting made fun of all the time. You're not a player anymore, and you had this great year with Dak, as you pointed out, one of the best years of his career, if not the best, and they win 7 games, which is that's embarrassing. That you would come up with that kind of win total with a quarterback playing that well. That's all. I'd like to go back and look at the numbers to see how many times in the Cowboys' history they've had a quarterback play as well as Dak played this year, and then they got no more wins than that. That's, most of the time there's a correlation between quarterback play and wins, right?
Yeah, but it's funny. It's also based on how well you or how you measure how well they're playing, right? Because like I think that they're, and I'm not calling Dak Prescott a stat merchant by any means. As someone who kind of excels in when games are lost, because obviously they had to throw a lot in order to try and catch up in these games. But I remember looking at some point, and this is anecdotally speaking, but I remember looking at the end of the season to that very point of like historically from an NFL perspective, when offenses overall are playing this well, how much success, how rare is it that they didn't have the success that the Cowboys um, eluded the Cowboys this year, and it was actually kind of common. You saw a lot of offenses that had thrived, that didn't have a lot of success, and I think part of that, from a statistical standpoint, is the fact that defenses just weren't good enough, and they had to play catch up a lot, like the Cowboys did this season.
So, Joe, what you're telling me is that defense wins championships. You are the Nico Harrison of the NFL.
Yeah, and that's why I believe you should trade Dak Prescott for an interior defensive lineman. Dak Prescott 2 first-round picks, and maybe they get Dexter Lawrence from New York. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. We need some more defensive tackles. No question about that. All right, so do you think we're going to see with the new coaching staff? And I don't, listen, I used to know these guys. I don't know any of these guys anymore in the league. These assistant coaches, it just like I just don't know them. I don't know where they come from. Do you see anything in this group? Is there a theme?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it kind of goes back to I've been kind of saying this when they had an opening for defensive coordinator. I was saying, I wonder if Brian Schottenheimer is going to go get his defensive Clayton Adams. If Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones will kind of trust him to build a group together that they can all discern and then make a hire that's very Clayton Adams like, who was, someone that was well known in league circles, but not really externally, not a popular hot name. And then after what they did with Clayton Adams, they then hired some college coaches. They hired some up and coming guys. Again, kind of some more unheard of guys, but they all were kind of teachers in their minds. And I think honestly, we're just seeing a replication of what we saw last year on offense, but this year on defense, kind of a recalibration, if you will. I think that Christian Parker is the defensive Clayton Adams that Brian Schottenheimer was hoping for. Someone who hasn't called plays before, an up and coming young coach that has kind of the label of potentially being a future head coach in this NFL if things work out for him. That's Christian Parker, and I think the assistants you're seeing them go after. They're doing a thorough search, by the way, like truly, which is again is not something. It's not something that normally I think would be like, oh, hey, pat on the back, great job, you're doing a good search. But here in Dallas, I think it's interesting and it's worth applauding because it's not what they've done historically. And I think that they're going after and trying to find guys, even from the college ranks that they've talked to try and see if they can build a staff that's the most thorough and best group of teachers they have. Ryan Smith from Arizona is someone to be their secondary coach that they hired. And Derek Ainsley, who was the defensive passing game coordinator, he'll take the same role with the Cowboys that he had in Green Bay. And then they're close to signing Marcus Dixon from Minnesota. And I think the other thing, when you kind of look at those guys, they're all defensive systems that I think the Cowboys had respect for. I think they liked what Jonathan Gannon did in Arizona from a defensive standpoint, from a scheme standpoint. Obviously they thought about hiring him, right? And I thought he kind of was the favorite going into round two. And then they turn around in Minnesota. That's someone they had a lot of respect for. Geronte Jones was another finalist. Brian Flores is someone that they have the utmost admiration for from a scheme standpoint, and they're able to get his defensive line coach to come here to Dallas rather than Washington, where Geronte Jones is going to be the DC there. So I think that they know what they want, they know what they like, and they're really doing a thorough job of trying to find the best version of it possible. Truly.
I
So,
am not
real
going
quickly
to
on hold on a second, Evan. I want to ask you about Brian Flores. So everybody assumed that Brian Flores maybe was going to get a head coaching job, maybe with the Raiders. That didn't happen, and he looks like he's going back to Minnesota. Why wouldn't the Cowboys have tried to hire Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator?
Yeah, it's a good question. And what I was told was there was anticipation that he would be a head coach from their perspective. And then, Washington, for example, did talk with him for the DC job. What I was told, that was kind of, a little bit, hey, this is just kind of hope just in case things fall out in Minnesota too. The impression I got was if he's not going to be a head coach, he's going to go back to Minnesota to be the DC. So we're not going to kind of, for a lack of a better word, waste our time trying to talk to someone that will not be ultimately in our plans.
Okay. All right. That's too bad because he's a terrific defensive coordinator. All right. Evan, did you have something you wanted to ask Joe?
No. I'm all good.
Okay. All right. Well, Joe, we're going to try to wrap this up. But before we go, we know how much you love, like I do, the offseason and roster building. Give us an idea of somebody in the draft that the Cowboys might be looking at here. Let's go ahead and leave it in the first round because that's difficult to project past that. But if you were betting right now, who do you think they would take in the first round?
So I think I had my first mock draft come out yesterday. And I
All
felt
right,
good
Joe,
about
I
it.
missed your mock draft. I have to go back and
Yeah,
check.
I felt
Okay.
good about it, right? I did all 32 picks. I felt good about what I did, and a lot of people did not like it. Even my friend Jeff Kavanaugh, who I worked with previously, he tweeted at me they didn't like it. And then when I saw him in the streets of San Francisco yesterday, the first thing he says to me is like, "Hey, love you, but hated your draft." So,
Wow, that's
and
harsh.
I know it's okay though. But, and the thing, I think the reason that people didn't like it is, and I think it's something, I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news, Cowboys fans. I think 12 is actually going to be a pretty tough spot to get one of the elite guys that we may have already fallen in love with, in terms of their fit with the Cowboys. We talk about Caleb Downs, we talk about maybe David Bailey, we talk about one of these edge rushers falling. If you look at the way the draft is kind of laid out, and I think it's very interesting to do a 32 pick first round rather than just let me pick for the Cowboys only and let me see what PFF says and who's there from the simulation standpoint. Because when you look at it, I think the fact that there's only one quarterback that's likely going to be taken, it makes things a little difficult for some of these defensive guys to actually fall to the Cowboys. I do think there's a chance that Caleb Downs, that's kind of one of the prevailing thoughts, is that maybe safety and linebacker won't be valued as much. So maybe Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles is there, right? When I did it, I just couldn't find enough spots for them to fall to 12. So ultimately, spoiler, this was the mock draft results. I had them taking Jermod McCoy in the first round at 12 because I think Christian Parker needs an elite talent that he can mold. I talked with Pat Surtain yesterday, who checked every single box as a prospect, was ultimately a top 10 pick by the Broncos in 2021, became a defensive player of the year last year. He's fantastic. And he said that Christian Parker raised his level, that things that Christian Parker taught him are things that he still uses today. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean were two guys that also needed Christian Parker's tutelage when they were picked to be immediate starters, and they ended up helping the Eagles win a Super Bowl last year. I think Christian Parker needs his moldable clay, his elite talent, and I think Jermod McCoy would fit that. The one caveat also being that he had a torn ACL and missed all of last season. I don't think this is a Savone Revel situation where things would linger. We're going to find out more resolute about that at the combine when he takes his medical. But I think Jermod McCoy would be an elite talent, that Christian Parker could work with. And then at 20, I had them taking CJ Allen from Georgia, who I think in terms of linebacker, he might not be the most explosive linebacker, but I do think from a Mike linebacker standpoint, I think that they're going to want someone to pair well with DeMarvion Overshown at will. And I think that CJ Allen could fit that. People hated those two picks for the Cowboys. I'm sorry, they threw virtual eggs at me. But I think that that's kind of the route that might happen. And I think Cowboy fans need to prepare for the possibility that the guy that they love, just like Ashton Jeanty and Ted McMillan last year, might not be there when they pick a 12.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. It really hurts, like you said, about the not being quarterbacks, multiple quarterbacks, because that always drives down the talent and gives you a chance to get one of those guys. Let me ask you this about so we can go a little bit local on that. What do you think about Cassius Howell? Is he a first round draft pick?
Yeah, I think he's a first round pick. Someone that could dip into the second. I think what he does from an elite trait standpoint is too good to pass up. He just has to get consistent. I mean, I think you it was against a lower level team, but I think anytime you have the equivalent of a perfect inning, to use a baseball term, when you have 3 straight sacks on 3 straight plays and end a
Yeah,
drive, like I
yeah.
think that shows you just how talented someone can be from a pass rush standpoint. He's got elite talent. I think I had him going in the mid-teens, maybe early 20s. And I think that that's someone that, from a talent standpoint, people are going to believe that they can get the most out of him. Whether that actually happens or not remains to be seen.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's wrap this up now. We're going to make our Super Bowl picks. And Joe, since you're the expert, we're going to let you go first. Who you got here? Patriots or Seahawks?
Expert. I don't know if my picks this year. I think Tim might have got me on picks this year.
Tim got everybody. Tim has let us know.
Yeah.
He
how good
told
did.
me he would give me like a week by week notice and be like, oh, you picked this week. I don't think you're going to be able to catch me because you picked that this week. And I'd be like, Tim, like, good for you. I just
I
don't got it
told
this
Tim he
year.
takes it a lot more seriously than I do.
Facts.
Tim had clinching scenarios set up.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I just think Seattle's too good to lose this game. I think defensively what they do is too good. I've got a feature coming out on Jackson Smith and Jigba and Christian Gonzalez coming out, and I think that matchup is going to be fascinating. I'm so curious to see how they try and stop JSN. Or as Guillermo from Jimmy Kimmel said, yelled right in my ear last night while asking the question, Jackson Smith and Jabba. I think Seattle's too good. I think the Patriots will hang around, but ultimately Seattle wins, maybe by double digits.
Wow, double digits.
Yeah.
All right, Evan, what do you say?
I've got Seattle by a touchdown. I'm just gonna go with a lazy 28-21 pick.
Yeah, you know what? I've liked Seattle all along. The amazing thing about this, and this is what should be embarrassing to the Cowboys.
Whoa. You've liked Seattle all along since when?
So, since the playoffs started. I like the play. Since the playoffs started, I liked Seattle.
Oh, okay. All right.
What's not to like? They're just for everything that Joe just talked about. The
Well,
embarrassing thing for the Cowboys
offers some. There's some potential context there. It's like, I picked Seattle in August. Well, no, you liked them once the playoffs started.
I just told you I don't take these picks seriously. So back off, pal. Okay? Can I talk now? Wow.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're 25 minutes in. You haven't talked enough?
No, I haven't. Is that this should embarrass the Cowboys that Seattle, as we recall, there was a Super Bowl where they played the Patriots in which they lost, and if they had just run the ball into the end zone, Seattle would have beaten the Patriots in that play. What a ridiculous play call that was. But they fell apart, right? They lose their head coach, they lose their quarterback, they lose everything. They're starting all over again, and here they are. They're back in the Super Bowl again, and while the Cowboys are waiting, forever, and meanwhile the Seahawks have reinvented themselves. It just shows what can happen when you have a really competent general manager and a guy pushing the right buttons, both in the draft and free agency and in hiring of coaches. So yeah, I'm going to say. I don't
want to rain on your parade, but both of these teams seem to have reinvented.
I was going to say New England too. Yeah.
Oh, for sure they have, absolutely. But I think that it seems to me that has gotten a lot bigger play than the Seahawks have. The Seahawks, everybody's just kind of, it seems to me, ignored them for the most part.
I think in the context of the Cowboys, they're both remarkable because both these teams have been at the pinnacle, fallen to the bottom of their conferences, and have returned. And the Cowboys are still waiting for an NFC Championship game.
Yeah, no question. So I'm going to say, I'll say 24-21 Seahawks. All right, that's going to do it. Joe, listen, we appreciate you stopping by with us, man. Have a good time out there. I don't know. What are you doing to have fun? Anything?
They have the Super Bowl media party tonight at the EA Sports Complex. So I was going to go check that out. And also, I don't know if Evan's gotten this one in his trips to the Bay, but Dutch Crunch bread sandwiches are just like my favorite sandwiches out there. And they're only a Northern California thing for some reason. So I'll be sure to get a big Dutch Crunch
Yeah,
sandwich.
I never got the whole Dutch cut. I
You can't
can't
even
even
say it.
say it even. Um, but I never really got the Dutch crunch thing. I mean, in San Francisco, you can get great sourdough, so I'm just really happy to get that sourdough there.
And that's fair.
Um, but the Dutch crunch, it used to be a big thing at Old Candlestick Park. They had Dutch crunch rolls for sandwiches up there in the press box, and everybody raved about them. And I had them a couple of times. And maybe the press box of Candlestick Park wasn't the best place to eat Dutch crunch bread, but yeah, it didn't blow me away. But
You
Joe,
just gotta
you're
bias against the Dutch. You're just anti-Dutch
I just came back from Holland. I love the Dutch.
from Holland.
I'll send you some
Okay.
recs though for next time. There's some spots that I would recommend.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but being in the National League, it's hard to get in the American League. It's hard to get to San Francisco now because the A's play in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's the Bay Area, though, right? Like, it's just a quick little jaunt up there.
Yeah,
That's
just right
that's
across the
close.
way.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. Thanks, man. We'll see you. All right. So, Evan, when do you leave to go to spring training?
I leave on Monday morning. Super Bowl ends, I leave. And the
Wow.
interesting thing, Skip Schumacher told his coaches, stay with your families through Sunday. Don't come out there before the Super Bowl. Go watch the Super Bowl with your families. Do that thing. Come out Monday morning as well. So pretty much the entire organization won't go until after the Super Bowl, and then their first workout is Tuesday for the pitchers and catchers.
Wow. Pitchers and catchers. It's like a magical term in baseball. Pitchers and catchers report. So, Evan, first of all, who are the catchers going to be?
Catchers are going to be Kyle Higashioka and Danny Jansen. Willie McIver will be the number 3 guy, and obviously, if the Rangers get into a jam with McIver, he can put together 2 electrical strings and make a nominal catcher. Um,
Uh,
but I still think before it's over that they will sign another veteran to a minor league deal. They just need another insurance policy in case somebody gets hurt. There's a couple of guys out there, including last year's starter Jonah Heim, who is the youngest of the free agent catchers still on the market, and doesn't and I think maybe one of the only ones that has an all-star berth, and he doesn't have a contract at this point.
I think Mitch Garver's been an all-star.
I don't know if Mitch Garver ever had an all-star berth or not.
He's good enough. He was good enough to be. What would you think about bringing him back?
I wouldn't have a problem with it. I just don't know how much Mitch could actually be behind the plate.
Well, he's not going to have to be, right? 20 games, maybe?
Yeah, in all likelihood. I'd have zero problem with bringing Mitch Garver back. I think that of the group that's out there, maybe I had mentioned Luke Maley from Kansas City because he's got the best receiving ability of that group, and I guess that for me, if you have to go to a situation where you've got to use that last catcher, you're not looking for anything offensively. You're looking for somebody who can contribute somehow defensively, and Maley kind of fits that.
Okay. I didn't look at Mitch's numbers last year. Was he down considerably offensively?
Yeah, they were not good.
Yeah. Yeah, he really hasn't ever been what he was before he came to the Rangers. So
Yeah, I mean he's a mid-30s catcher at this point in time, and that's what happens to those guys. But
yeah.
his 2 years in Seattle, he hit 187 with a 632 OPS. So,
Oof. brutal.
It's hard. As much as I like Mitch, and as much as I think he'd be a good presence in the clubhouse, I just don't know if the Rangers, and I mean we're talking an awful lot here about a third catcher who probably won't make the team, but I just think that there's not much in terms of asset there.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is because of what you pointed out. You've got two catchers right now who probably don't need to catch more than about, I don't know if you're going to
I think
get,
ideally you would get 70 starts out of both Higashioka and
yeah,
Jansen, and that's probably going to leave you 25 starts that are either going to be lost to injuries or something else, and that's why you've got to have a third. Now MacGyver has a bit of big league experience, and that's why they signed him, because he's optionable, that's why they claimed him. He's optionable, so he can go back and forth. I just think you need to have some protection in spring training in case you get an injury.
all right. So let's talk. You're criticizing me for concentrating on the third catcher. I'm sorry. I apologize. So let's go big picture here. If the Rangers are in it at the trade deadline, do you think that Ray Davis will open up his checkbook?
Yeah, I think he will. Now, how much he'll open up his checkbook, that's a different story. But he's also got room, under the CBT this year. Uh, I think if the Rangers are in contention, and for me, that's got to be a measurable number of games above 500. They've got to be 4 or 5 games above 500, and I think he will try and add. And I would think that the most likely place that the Rangers would try and add would be a closer. Maybe it may be a bat at that point in time because they may actually have answers about some guys. But I do think he'd be willing to add. And look, he just added another $5.5 million in payroll with the Mackenzie Gore deal. So I think he's been more willing since January 1st to add a little bit of payroll, not much, but a little bit. And I think if this team demonstrates that they are capable of winning, he will open it up a little bit more.
So you think that they're probably going to have to a few games over 500? You don't think 500 is good enough at the deadline?
Listen, they've been close to 500 at the deadline the last 2 years, and they kind of swapped a little bit of money around, Chafin for Lorenzen in 24. Last year they added. I think again, Kevin, you have to look at the situation. If you're around 500, but you've got a number of teams still to catch in a wild card, and you're playing for that last wild card, are you really, what are you really doing there? Maybe the Rangers say we'll just hold tight and we'll make our trades after the season. But I think that, to your point and to the column you wrote last week, I really think that if this team doesn't demonstrate a hunger and an ability to win and seize games, I think Chris Young is willing to move on at that point in time and move towards the next window of opportunity.
Well, and here's the other thing too, is that, I think the chances of a work stoppage are really good, right?
That's what that's the conventional wisdom at this point in time. I think that it's ridiculous for baseball to have a work stoppage. I think the only way a work stoppage ends up benefiting the owners is if they eventually cancel the whole season and are willing to ride that out, and then maybe that breaks the union, and that's what they want to do, and that gets them their salary cap. But I think that would be a high price to pay to get that salary cap.
Well, I think it's a high price, but I think they're going to do it. And here's why: because the Dodgers and the Mets driving their budgets into the stratosphere and willing to do that, and there's just no end to the money, of how much they're willing to spend. Especially Mark Walter with the Dodgers, he'll spend whatever he needs to spend to get what he wants. And so there's been a public backlash against it now. So I think the owners are going to feel like we've got the public on our side now, because they realize that, yeah, this isn't right, that these organizations can spend that kind of money and spending 3 and 4 times what some of the other clubs are spending. And so therefore we're going to do this now. Now they'll obviously, if you give up the whole season, you're not going to have the public on your side anymore, but it wouldn't be the same as it was in past years. I don't think, and I think that the owners feel like if we're not going to do it now, when are we going to do it?
Well, and if I were I think that the owners, if they want to get a salary cap, I think they need to, for the first time in 150 years, realize that they've got to be honest and trustworthy, and offer the players something real in return. And if it's me, I'm pursuing the situation where I say we've got as much problem with the owners at the bottom of the league as we do with the guys at the top of the league. And the first remedy I'm going to offer the players is we're going to up the minimum salary to say $2 million a year, and your pre-arbs are going to go in increments of 500,000. So it'd go 2, 2, 5, 3, 3, 3, 5, and then you go to arb, and that you have a floor, maybe for the first 2 years of a 4-year deal, that is at least $150 million for teams, and only then would you phase in the salary cap, because I think you've got to build some trust that, hey, we want to give you something tangible in return. And maybe that gets somewhere with the younger players, and maybe it gets somewhere with the guys who are trying to hang on, because that's a big difference. I mean, you raise your minimum salary by 4 times what guys are making right now, or 3 times what guys are making right now. That's a lot of cash for guys who, are more on the typical end of the big league career, right, with less than 3 years of service, than guys who are long-term vets. And maybe that makes some sense. And I think it makes some sense for baseball. I think it makes some sense for the players. But what happens invariably with this is the contract ends at the end of the season, right? Or December 1st, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The CBA, they won't get serious about negotiating until about September. This should be something that is done by June. They could hammer this out, but both sides are convinced that they want to, quote unquote, win a negotiation, and you only win a negotiation if you hold out until you're up against a deadline.
Yeah. It's a crazy thing to me. I was thinking about this the other day about athletes and the money they make in different sports. And, in no sport is more dangerous or debilitating to athletes than football players, NFL players. And yet they make less than basketball players and baseball players both, which is just awful. It's just awful that is the case. And so you can't side against baseball players who are trying to retain the ability to not have to operate under a cap and get the most of what they are. That's only right. That's just capitalism at its best, right? But when you see it against football and what's happened there, it's just amazing to me. Everybody concentrates on the fact that Dak's made $60 million. It's like, now he's going to make a lot less this year because they're going to spread things out and all that kind of stuff. But there are like 3 or 4 guys on the roster who are making that kind of, not that money, but they're making big money, 20 million or more. On the baseball roster, there's all kinds of guys making over $10 million.
Yeah. And all of that's right. And I think that there's a scenario where a cap does make some sense. But that cap's got to be, in my mind, above 300 million. And it only can be accomplished if the floor is raised to, if a floor is raised to 150 or so.
Yeah.
And I will just say this, Kevin, we've already lost, due to COVID and then the prolonged negotiations around when to restart the 2020 season. We've already lost more than half of a season of Shohei Ohtani, the player. This may be the greatest player of all time. I mean, I'm now in the conversation of this is that kind of player. And if we lose a full season of Shohei Ohtani in his prime, shame on the entire game. Just shame on the entire game. It is an absolute.
I'm with
criminal.
you 100%. And I want to make that clear. When I said I think it's going to happen, I'm not for it. Obviously, it's ridiculous. I'm getting toward the end here too, and I don't want to. I like to be covering some baseball games. So I just don't. I just think that the owners are going to do this. That there's a reason why they got that kind of money, because they like it. and they like keeping it. And I could certainly imagine Ray Davis being in favor of it. I mean, of course, they're all in favor of a cap, except for maybe Mark Walter. I think that this is probably inevitable. But my point in all of this was, I think this should be a factor in the way the Rangers move forward here. If you think you've got a chance this year, and if you, like you said, if you're right around 500, 2 or 3 games over, go all in, because as we know, you don't have to pay anybody if there's a work stoppage.
Right.
They don't draw paychecks then. So someone needs to hammer that home with Ray Davis to make sure he understands it. Hey, you don't have to pay anything if this happens. So that's my thought.
It's a good thing that we're not to spring training yet, and we're talking about work stoppages in 27.
I just want to get this all clear, because it's part of the thinking going into the season.
But that is, and that will hang over the season all year long. That will take on a life of its own, and it'll become about the work stoppage in 27 as opposed to what's going on the field in 26.
But it has everything to do with what you want to do. That's the thing. You have to take that into consideration when you are trying to plan, what do we do? Do we go all in or not? And I think it actually encourages you to go all in because of the feeling that there's no tomorrow. So anyway, is there anything else, Evan, you need to bring up?
No, I'm disappointed for Jack Leiter. He was invited to play on Team USA. Probably only would have appeared once, and probably right in the first round as a reliever. Just some complications there that go with insurance values and time. I think probably the Rangers uncomfortable with him taking some time away from camp, if at all possible. But it's just unfortunate. But I do think that, listen, even though Jack would have been like the 12th pitcher on a 12-man staff, that the notion that he was that highly thought of by Mark DeRosa and Team USA Baseball should serve as another boost in confidence for this kid, that he's on the right track and is a legitimate big league pitcher now.
I hope so. The Rangers need to have a hit like that, right? They can live with Kumar Rocker not ended up being what he's supposed to have been if Jack Leiter is,
listen, yeah, but I think that I don't think that Kumar Rocker's expiration date has come even visible yet. I think the Rangers still believe that Kumar is going to take a big step forward this year. And listen, if he doesn't, there is always the opportunity to move him into a high velocity, end of the game leverage reliever type role.
I'm on board with that now. I've officially moved Kumar Rocker from the rotation into the back of the bullpen, and I think that's fine. If that's what they get out of him, and that's what he ends up being, if he is a really effective, whether that's as a closer or a really good setup guy, that's fine.
So just for the record, Kevin, when Kumar, and I think he still has his rookie status, but in the event that he does, when he wins Rookie of the Year as a starter this year, will you add that to the end of the year mistakes column, things that you regret saying?
Sure.
Okay.
I always do that. I'm always looking for material. That's one of the reasons why I say such outlandish things, is that so I can put it back up. I've got it ready to go. The problem is that sometimes I forget that I say these things, or that
I'll remind you. Don't worry.
You'll remember. Okay, good. It's good to know you're out there to remind me of all my foibles. Don't you like that word, foibles?
I love foibles.
Foibles is great. I love it. Almost as much as pimento cheese. Really good pimento cheese. All right. That's going to do it for our podcast this week. We hope you enjoyed it. We did. And we'll be back next week to talk some more. Evan will be in surprise at that point, and he'll work us into his schedule somehow, I know. And we'll have some more fun talking about, fourth string, middle infielders. I don't know. Anyway.
We'll be there.
Yeah. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.